Billionaire widower finds 12-year-old girl kicked out of her home for being pregnant on the street. He's shocked when. Before we embark on this story, write down where you're watching from in the comments. Let's journey together through this tale of unexpected connections and second chances. Rain lashed against the windshield of Maxwell Porter's Bentley as lightning split the dark Boston sky. The wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, and Maxwell's knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel. 5 years after Catherine's death, storms still unsettled him, reminders of the night he lost everything that mattered. "Sir, shall I reschedule tomorrow's board meeting?" Victoria's voice came through the car's speaker system. "No," Maxwell replied, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had buried his emotions alongside his wife and stillborn son. "The Johnson acquisition won't wait." At 45, Maxwell Porter had transformed grief into empire building. The financial press called him the Ice King, brilliant but ruthless, with eyes that hadn't truly seen anything since the day he stood at Catherine's grave. As he turned down a shortcut through an unfamiliar neighborhood, his headlights caught something, a flash of movement in an alley. Maxwell nearly drove past, but something made him slow down. There, huddled against a dumpster, was a small figure shivering in the downpour. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling over. Common sense told him to call social services and drive away. Instead, he found himself stepping into the deluge. Expensive. Italian shoes immediately soaked. The girl couldn't have been more than 12. Thin shoulders hunched protectively around a worn backpack, clothes plastered to her small frame. When she looked up, Maxwell was struck by eyes too old for such a young face. "Are you okay?" he asked, rain streaming down his face. She didn't answer immediately, studying him with a wariness that spoke volumes. "I'm fine," she finally said, voice barely audible above the storm. "You're clearly not fine," Maxwell responded. "Where are your parents?" A bitter smile twisted her lips. "They made it clear I'm not their daughter anymore." Something in her tone, resignation mixed with determination, reminded Maxwell of himself. Before he could reconsider, he was offering her shelter in his car. In the Bentley's interior light, he could see her more clearly. Pale skin, dark hair tangled from the rain, and clothes that had seen better days. "I'm Maxwell Porter," he said. "Turning up the heat." "Ellie Brooks," she replied, clutching her backpack like a shield. "Why are you out in this storm, Ellie?" She stared out the window, silent tears mixing with raindrops on her face. "Because I made a mistake, and now nobody wants me." Maxwell had built a life around avoiding other people's problems, yet something about this child's quiet desperation reached past his carefully constructed walls. "You need medical attention," he said, noticing how she cradled her abdomen. "I'm taking you to the hospital. At Massachusetts General, the emergency." Room staff took one look at Maxwell's tailored suit, despite being rain-soaked, and Ellie's bedraggled appearance and drew immediate conclusions. "Your daughter will be fine, Mr. Porter," the nurse assured him. "She's not my—" Maxwell began but stopped when he saw fear flash across Ellie's face. Dr. Sarah Reynolds took him aside after examining Ellie. Her expression was grave. "Mr. Porter, the girl is approximately 3 months pregnant." The words hit Maxwell like a physical blow. "That's impossible. She's just a child herself." "Unfortunately, it's quite possible," Dr. Reynolds replied quietly. "And given her age and physical condition, this pregnancy is high risk." When Maxwell returned to Ellie's bedside, she watched him with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. "They told you," she said. "It wasn't a question. Yes. Now you'll call social services and I'll end up in the system." Her voice was flat, devoid of hope. Maxwell should have done exactly that. It was the sensible, appropriate response. Instead, he found himself asking, "Is that what happened? Your parents threw you out because you're pregnant?" Ellie nodded, fingers nervously twisting the hospital blanket. "They said I brought shame on the family, that I was dead to them." A single tear escaped. "The worst part is, it wasn't even my fault. No one believed me." Before Maxwell could respond, A hospital social worker arrived, clipboard in hand and suspicion in her eyes as she looked between the billionaire and the pregnant child. "I need to understand your relationship to this minor," she began. As the questions continued, Maxwell watched Ellie retreat further into herself with each inquiry. When the social worker stepped out to make a phone call, Ellie suddenly reached for Maxwell's hand with surprising strength. "Please," she whispered desperately. "Don't let them send me back. They'll make me give up my baby or worse." Her eyes filled with a desperate hope, locked with his. "You have resources. You could adopt me. Please." The request was absurd, impossible. Yet as thunder crashed outside, Maxwell Porter found himself staring into the eyes of a child asking him to do the one thing he'd sworn never to attempt again. Be a father. "Adopt you?" Maxwell's voice was barely a whisper. In the sterile hospital room, the absurdity of the request hung between them. Ellie's fingers remained wrapped around his wrist, her touch feather-light, yet somehow anchoring him to this moment he couldn't escape. "I researched you while waiting in the emergency room," she admitted. Maxwell Porter, CEO of Porter Industries, net worth over $3 billion, widower. Her eyes softened. "You lost your wife and baby." Maxwell pulled his hand away as if burned. "That's not something I discuss." "I'm sorry," Ellie whispered, lowering her gaze. "I just thought maybe you'd understand what it's like to lose everything." Before Maxwell could respond, Victoria Winters swept into the room, impeccably dressed despite the late hour, concern etched across her normally composed features. "Maxwell, what on earth is going on? I've had to reschedule 3 meetings and the hospital called saying you're involved with—" Her gaze landed on Ellie, taking in the hospital gown and the girl's obvious youth. "Oh, Victoria, this is Ellie Brooks," Maxwell said, grateful for his assistant's timely arrival. "Ellie, this is Victoria, my personal assistant." "Your very confused personal assistant," Victoria corrected, stepping closer to Maxwell. In a lowered voice she added, "The social worker outside is asking some rather pointed questions. What exactly is happening here?" Maxwell led Victoria to the corner of the room. "I found her in an alley during the storm. She's been thrown out by her family. She's pregnant." The last word caught in his throat. Victoria's professional mask slipped for a moment. "My God, how old is she?" 12. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. "Maxwell, while this is undoubtedly tragic, you cannot possibly be considering, whatever this is. Call the proper authorities and let them handle it." "That's what I intended to do," Maxwell said, rubbing his temples. "But you didn't see her out there, Victoria. Alone, terrified." "You're not thinking clearly," Victoria whispered urgently. "The press would have a field day. Billionaire takes in pregnant child. The implications alone could destroy everything you've built." Maxwell knew she was right. He'd built his post-Catherine life on cold logic and calculated decisions. Taking responsibility for a pregnant 12-year-old was neither logical nor calculated. A knock at the door interrupted their hushed conference. Dr. Reynolds entered with the social worker, whose name tag identified her as Rebecca Palmer. "Mr. Porter, we need to discuss Ellie's situation," Ms. Palmer began. "I've contacted the Department of Children and Families. Given the circumstances, they're sending someone immediately to arrange emergency placement." "No," Ellie cried, struggling to sit up in the hospital bed. "Please don't send me to strangers." "Ellie," Ms. Palmer's voice was practiced gentle. "Your parents have been notified of your location, but given what you've told us about your home situation, we can't return you there until a proper investigation takes place." Maxwell watched Ellie's face crumple. In that moment, she looked even younger than her 12 years. "What if she stays with me temporarily?" The words left Maxwell's mouth before he could stop them. "I have more than enough room, resources for proper care, and can provide security during this sensitive situation." 4 pairs of eyes turned to him in shock. "Mr. Porter," Ms. Palmer began carefully, "while I appreciate your concern placing a minor, especially one in Ellie's condition, Requires proper vetting, home studies, background checks, all of which I'm willing to undergo. Maxwell interrupted. But that takes time, correct? In the meantime, isn't it better for her to be somewhere stable, rather than an emergency placement that could change at any moment? Doctor, Reynolds cleared her throat. From a medical perspective, stability would certainly benefit Ellie's condition. While the adults debated her fate, Ellie remained silent, her eyes never leaving Maxwell. There was something in that gaze, hope mingled with suspicion, as though waiting for him to reveal his true motives. Later that night, after a flurry of calls, paperwork, and Victoria's barely concealed disapproval, temporary arrangements were ready. Ellie would be released into Maxwell's care as an emergency foster placement, pending proper evaluation. As they drove through the rain-slicked streets toward his Beacon Hill mansion, Maxwell broke the silence. "This is temporary, Ellie. You understand that, don't you?" "Yes," she replied softly, watching the city lights blur through raindrops on the window. "That's what everyone always says." The mansion's lights came into view, and Maxwell heard Ellie's small intake of breath. "You live here? Alone?" "Yes." The single word carried the weight of 5 empty years. Victoria had arranged for a guest room, to be prepared, and as Maxwell showed Ellie into the spacious bedroom, he felt oddly self-conscious of the austere decor that characterized his home. "The bathroom is through there," he said awkwardly. "Victoria arranged for some clothes and essentials, if you need anything." "Why are you doing this?" Ellie interrupted, her voice small but direct. Maxwell had been asking himself the same question. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Is it because of your wife and your baby?" Maxwell stiffened. "I think that's enough questions for tonight. You need rest." As he turned to leave, Ellie called after him. "Her name was Catherine, wasn't it? I read that online. And you were going to name your son James." Maxwell froze in the doorway, memories washing over him like the storm outside. Catherine's smile, the nursery they'd painted together, the devastating stillness in the delivery room. "Don't ever mention them again," he said quietly, not turning around. "Good night, Ellie." Back in his study, Maxwell found Victoria waiting, glass of scotch in hand. "You look like you need this," she said, offering him the tumbler. "What I need is for you to contact Nathan Harris first thing tomorrow," Maxwell replied, accepting the drink. "Tell him I need everything he can find on Ellie Brooks and her family. If they threw her out, there has to be more to the story." "And what exactly is your plan here, Maxwell?" Victoria asked. "Play temporary guardian until you get bored or it becomes inconvenient. This isn't a stray puppy you've taken in." Maxwell downed the scotch in one swallow. "I'm well aware of that." "Are you?" Victoria's voice softened. "Because I've known you for 8 years, and this is the most impulsive thing I've ever seen you do." She mentioned Catherine, didn't she? The glass nearly shattered in Maxwell's grip. "That's not why I'm doing this, isn't it?" Victoria challenged. "A pregnant girl who's lost everything? You don't see any parallels there?" Before Maxwell could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Maxwell. "Porter," he answered. "Mr. Porter." The voice was cold, controlled fury. "This is Joseph Brooks. You have my daughter." Maxwell's jaw tightened. "Your daughter who you threw out into a storm? That daughter?" "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in," Joseph Brooks replied. "Ellie is a troubled, manipulative child who has brought nothing but shame to our family. Whatever she's told you is a lie." "Is her pregnancy a lie?" Maxwell asked sharply. A pause. "That abomination is not coming into our home. If you're so concerned about her welfare, perhaps you should know that the pregnancy is the result of her own sinful behavior." Maxwell felt ice forming in his veins. "She's 12 years old, Mr. Brooks. Old enough to know right from wrong," came the cold reply. "Return her to proper authorities immediately, Mr. Porter. You have no legal right to her. And neither seems do you anymore?" Maxwell countered. "Good night, Mr. Brooks." As he hung up, Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Her father?" Maxwell nodded, a new determination settling over him. "Victoria, Contact Nathan again. Tell him we're not just investigating the Brooks family. Tell him I want to discuss permanent guardianship options. Victoria's eyes widened. Maxwell, you can't possibly— I can, he interrupted. And I will. No child deserves what that man just revealed to me. As thunder echoed through the mansion, Maxwell wondered if somewhere, Catherine was guiding him toward this impossible decision, or warning him against it. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Maxwell Porter's study where he'd fallen. Asleep at his desk, files about temporary guardianship scattered across the polished mahogany surface. The soft chime of his phone jerked him awake. 6 missed calls from board members and a text from Victoria. Emergency meeting called. Johnson deal wavering. Your attendance required. Maxwell rubbed his temples. For the first time in 5 years, Porter Industries wasn't his first thought. Upon waking, a crash from upstairs jolted him fully alert. He took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound to the kitchen where he found Ellie surrounded by broken glass, milk pooling at her feet. I'm sorry, she blurted, frantically trying to clean up the mess. I was just trying to make breakfast. Maxwell had forgotten what another person in his house would sound like. The space had been silent for so long. It's fine, he said, grabbing paper towels. Are you hurt? Ellie shook her head, eyes wary as if expecting punishment. I thought I could make myself useful. You don't need to be useful, Ellie. You need to rest. Maxwell glanced at his watch. I have meetings I should attend. I'll stay out of the way, she promised quickly. The desperation in her voice reminded Maxwell of her precarious position. One word from him and she'd be back in the system. The realization of the power imbalance made him uncomfortable. I'll cancel my meetings, he decided. We should establish some ground rules and expectations. Ellie's shoulders relaxed slightly. Thank you for not sending me away. An hour later, Victoria arrived, arms laden with shopping bags. She raised an eyebrow at Maxwell's casual attire, and Ellie perched awkwardly at the kitchen island. Since you've apparently decided to miss the most important acquisition meeting of the quarter, Victoria said with thinly veiled disapproval, I thought I'd bring some necessities. She turned to Ellie with a softer expression. I wasn't sure. Of your size, so I guessed. There's also some. She glanced at Maxwell, then back to Ellie. Appropriate items for your condition. Thank you, Ellie murmured, eyeing the designer labels with apprehension. Victoria pulled Maxwell aside. The board is in an uproar. Jameson is threatening to call a vote of no confidence if you continue this. Distraction. Call Nathan, Maxwell replied. Have him prepare my proxy votes and reschedule the Johnson meeting for tomorrow. Maxwell, Victoria lowered her voice. What exactly is your endgame here? You have a multi-billion-dollar company to run. You can't just become an instant father to a pregnant adolescent. The word father struck Maxwell like a physical blow. This isn't about— He stopped, unsure how to explain what he himself didn't understand. Victoria's expression softened. I know Catherine's anniversary is coming up next week. Perhaps that's influencing your decisions. Maxwell's jaw tightened. This has nothing to do with Catherine. A discreet cough interrupted them. An impeccably dressed older man stood in the doorway. Excuse me, sir. Chef Bernard has arrived to prepare lunch and wishes to know if there are any dietary restrictions he should be aware of. Maxwell had forgotten he'd even employed a personal chef, another person who came and went through his life without making an impression. Ask Miss Brooks if she has any preferences, Maxwell instructed. Jenkins, his butler, looked momentarily confused before nodding. Very good, sir. As the day progressed, Maxwell watched his carefully ordered world tilt on its axis. Chef Bernard was scandalized when Ellie requested peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. Jenkins seemed uncertain how to address the young girl. The housekeeper fussed over appropriate accommodations. By evening, Maxwell had fielded 17 business calls, arranged for a tutor to assess Ellie's educational needs, and scheduled an IDISA appointment with the obstetrician Victoria had researched. Dr. Olivia Chen is the best in Boston, Victoria informed him as they reviewed the arrangements in his study. Discreet, experienced with high-risk pregnancies and, most importantly, not prone to gossip. Good, Maxwell replied, scanning the doctor's credentials. What about the tutor? James Walker, formerly with Phillips Academy. Excellent reputation, extensive experience with students requiring specialized education plans. Victoria hesitated. Maxwell, there's something else you should know. Nathan did some preliminary digging into the Brooks family. Maxwell looked up, immediately alert. They're well connected in their community. Joseph Brooks is a deacon at their church. Martha Brooks runs several women's ministry programs. On paper, they're the perfect Christian family. Victoria's expression darkened. But Nathan found something concerning. Police were called to their home twice in the past year. Reports were filed but later withdrawn. What kind of reports? The records are sealed because they involve a minor, but Nathan has contacts who indicated it might have been. Victoria selected her words carefully. Inappropriate conduct by an older relative. Nothing was ever substantiated. Maxwell felt fury building inside him. She told me it wasn't her fault. No one believed her. If that's true, Victoria said gently, then what she needs isn't just a roof over her head, Maxwell. She needs therapy, consistent support, legal protection, a complete infrastructure of care. Then that's what we'll provide, Maxwell replied. Without hesitation, a soft knock at the study door interrupted them. Ellie stood there in new pajamas that emphasized how painfully young she was. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice small. I just wanted to say goodnight. Of course, Maxwell replied awkwardly, unused to such domestic routines. Do you have everything you need? Ellie nodded but lingered in the doorway. I was wondering, could I maybe decorate the room a little? Not much, just some pictures or colors? Her fingers twisted the hem of her top. Only if it's okay. The simple request highlighted how sterile his home had become. After Catherine, he'd removed anything personal, creating spaces that were expensively appointed but devoid of character. You can change whatever you'd like in your room, Maxwell found himself saying. It's your space while you're here. A smile transformed Ellie's face, making her look momentarily carefree. Thank you. Good night, Mr. Porter. Good night, Ms. Winters. After she left, Victoria gave Maxwell a searching look. While you're here, that's the second time one of you has emphasized the temporary nature of this arrangement. Yet you're talking about infrastructure of care and legal protection. Maxwell didn't respond immediately. The truth was, he hadn't thought beyond rescuing Ellie from her immediate crisis, the reality of what raising a child, let alone one carrying another child, would entail hadn't fully registered. One day at a time, Victoria, he finally said. Victoria gathered her things to leave. The board meeting tomorrow cannot be postponed again, and Rebecca Palmer from DCF will be conducting her first home visit at 3. Maxwell nodded, already dreading the scrutiny. That night, unable to sleep, Maxwell found himself outside the door to what would have been his son's nursery, a room he'd kept locked for 5 years. On an impulse, he unlocked it. Everything remained exactly as Catherine had arranged it. The blue walls, the mobile of stars and planets, the rocking chair where she'd imagined nursing their child. What am I doing, Catherine? He whispered to the empty room. I couldn't save you and James. What makes me think I can save this girl and her baby? The silence offered no answers. A sound from down the hall caught his attention. Soft crying. Maxwell followed it to Ellie's room, hesitating. Outside her door, he was unprepared for this, for any of this. But the muffled sobs continued. He knocked gently. Ellie, are you all right? The crying stopped abruptly. After a moment, a small voice replied, I'm fine. Maxwell should have accepted the answer and returned to his own lonely room. Instead, he found himself asking, May I come in? A pause, then, Okay. Ellie sat cross-legged on the bed, hastily wiping tears from her face. In her lap was a small, worn photo album. I'm sorry if I disturbed you, she said. You didn't. Maxwell remained awkwardly by the door. Bad dream? Ellie shook her head. Just thinking about my brother, Michael. He's the only one who was ever nice to me. My parents wouldn't let him say goodbye when they threw me out. Maxwell moved cautiously into the room, sitting at the edge of the bed. Tell me about him, as Ellie spoke of her 17-year-old brother who taught her to ride a bike and defended her against bullies. Maxwell glimpsed a childhood that had moments of joy amidst apparent darkness. Do you think I'll ever see him again? Ellie asked, vulnerability naked in her expression. Before Maxwell could answer, his phone vibrated with an urgent email notification. Rebecca Palmer had moved tomorrow's home visit earlier, to 8 a.m. Maxwell looked at the frightened girl before him, then at the message demanding his immediate attention. His meticulously ordered life was crumbling, and for the first time in 5 years he wasn't sure what came next. Mr. Porter, while your financial resources are certainly substantial, Rebecca Palmer said, glancing around the designer kitchen where they sat, money alone doesn't qualify someone to care for a vulnerable child. At precisely 8 a.m., the social worker had arrived for her inspection, clipboard in hand, and skepticism evident in every line of her face. Maxwell, who routinely negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, found himself uncharacteristically nervous. I understand that, Maxwell replied, maintaining the calm demeanor that had served him well in boardrooms. I'm prepared to provide whatever Ellie needs, educational resources, medical care, emotional support. Ms. Palmer made a note. And what qualifies you to provide emotional support to a pregnant 12-year-old trauma victim, Mr. Porter? Your background is in finance, not child psychology. Before Maxwell could respond, Victoria stepped in smoothly. Mr. Porter has already arranged for Dr. Lydia Hoffman, a specialist in adolescent trauma, to begin sessions with Ellie next week. He's also engaged a tutor to ensure her education continues uninterrupted. The social worker raised an eyebrow. Impressive for less than 48 hours. Though it does raise questions about your long-term commitment, Mr. Porter. Children need stability, not just resources. Where is Ellie now? She continued, glancing around. With her tutor, Mr. Walker. They're assessing her educational needs. The library, Maxwell answered. Ms. Palmer stood. I'd like to speak with her alone. 30 minutes that felt like 3 hours later. Maxwell sat in his study, trying to focus on the Johnson acquisition documents Victoria had prepared. The board meeting loomed at noon, and he was woefully unprepared. Yet his thoughts kept drifting. To Ellie, alone with the woman who could remove her from his home with a single recommendation. A knock at the door revealed Victoria. Ms. Palmer is finished with Ellie and would like to speak with you again. Maxwell found the social worker in the sitting room, her expression unreadable. Mr. Porter, Ellie speaks very highly of you, she began. She seems to believe you're her only safe option. And what do you believe? Maxwell asked directly. Ms. Palmer considered him carefully. I believe you're a man with immense resources who's impulsively taken on a responsibility you may not fully comprehend. However, she continued before Maxwell could interject, I also believe Ellie has suffered significant trauma, and disrupting her again without cause would be detrimental. She closed her notebook. I'll be recommending continued temporary placement with you, pending further evaluations. But Mr. Porter, make no mistake, this is conditional. At the first sign that this arrangement is negatively impacting Ellie, I will remove her immediately. Maxwell nodded, surprised by the relief that washed over him. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Ms. Palmer replied, gathering her things. The real challenges are just beginning. Ellie's parents have filed a petition contesting her removal from their home. There will be a hearing next week. Maxwell's jaw tightened. After they threw her out? They claim Ellie ran away after an argument and that they've been searching for her, Ms. Palmer explained. The court will need to determine the truth. Ellie will have to testify. The thought of Ellie facing her parents in court made Maxwell's blood boil. I'll have my attorney present. I expected nothing less, Ms. Palmer replied. One last thing, Mr. Porter. Ellie mentioned that you lost your wife and child. I'm very sorry for your loss, but I need to be certain that you're not using this girl as a replacement. The accusation stung with its uncomfortable proximity to Victoria's earlier concerns. This has nothing to do with Catherine or James, Maxwell said firmly. This is about Ellie. Ms. Palmer held his gaze for a long moment. For her sake, I hope you're right. After she left, Maxwell found Ellie in the library with Mr. Walker. The girl's face brightened when she saw him. Mr. Porter, Mr. Walker says I'm ahead in most subjects despite missing school. James Walker, a distinguished man in his 50s, rose from his seat. Miss Brooks shows remarkable aptitude, Mr. Porter. With consistent instruction, she could easily advance beyond her grade level. For the first time since this whirlwind began, Maxwell felt a genuine sense of pride. That's excellent news. May I be excused? Ellie asked. I wanted to work on decorating my room before lunch. After she left, Walker's expression grew serious. Mr. Porter, while Ellie's academic abilities are impressive, I'm concerned about her emotional state. She becomes withdrawn when discussing certain subjects, particularly family history. She's been through a lot, Maxwell replied, wondering how much the tutor knew about Ellie's situation. Indeed, Walker agreed. Children are remarkably resilient, but they need consistent support. If I may ask, what are your long-term plans for her education? The question caught Maxwell off guard. Long-term plans. Everyone seemed to be asking about his intentions while he was still navigating day-to-day challenges. That will depend on several factors, Maxwell answered diplomatically. For now, I'd like you to continue daily sessions and develop a comprehensive curriculum. After Walker left, Maxwell barely had time to change for the board meeting. As he adjusted his tie, the Porter Industries blue that had become his trademark, he rehearsed responses to the inevitable questions about his absence yesterday. Victoria met him in the foyer. The car is waiting. Nathan will meet us at the office to brief you on the Brooks family's petition. What about Ellie? Maxwell asked. Jenkins will be here, and I've arranged for Dr. Chen to conduct her initial examination this afternoon. I'll return to accompany them. Maxwell nodded, impressed as always by Victoria's efficiency. As they approached the door, Ellie appeared at the top of the stairs. You're leaving? She asked, trying to mask her disappointment. Just for a few hours, Maxwell assured her. I have an important meeting. Ellie nodded bravely. Will you be back for dinner? The simple question carried such weight. For 5 years, Maxwell had rarely returned home before 9, often working through the night. Dinner had become a forgotten concept rather than a daily ritual. Yes, he promised. I'll be back for dinner. The board meeting was every bit as contentious as Maxwell had anticipated. Lawrence Jameson, his most vocal critic on the board, wasted no time in expressing his concerns. While you've been playing house, Porter, Johnson is wavering on the acquisition. They're talking to Westridge now. Maxwell kept his expression neutral as he addressed the board. Johnson has concerns about valuation, not commitment. I've prepared a revised offer that addresses their concerns without compromising our position. For the next 2 hours, Maxwell navigated the treacherous waters of corporate politics, outwardly composed while inwardly distracted by thoughts of Ellie facing her first prenatal appointment without him. When the meeting finally concluded with the board's reluctant approval of his revised strategy, Nathan Harris was waiting in Maxwell's office. Congratulations on surviving the lion's den, Nathan said, his legal mind evident in his precise language and immaculate appearance. What have you found out about the Brooks family? Maxwell asked, dispensing with pleasantries. Nathan opened his briefcase. Joseph and Martha Brooks married 20 years. He's a deacon at Covenant Faith Church. She runs the women's ministries. 2 children, Michael, 17, and Ellie, 12. On paper, they're pillars of the community. And beneath the paper? That's where it gets interesting, Nathan replied. The police reports Victoria mentioned were filed by Michael, not Ellie. He claimed his cousin, Sean Brooks, was behaving inappropriately toward his sister. The reports were withdrawn after church elders intervened, calling it a family matter to be handled internally. Maxwell's disgust must have shown on his face because Nathan nodded grimly. It gets worse. Sean Brooks, 22, lives with the family. His father is Joseph's brother and the church's pastor. The family dynamics suggest a pattern of suppressing anything that might reflect poorly on their standing in the church community. So they threw out their pregnant daughter rather than address the abuse, Maxwell summarized, fury building inside him. Their petition claims Ellie ran away after they confronted her about promiscuous behavior. They're painting her as troubled and manipulative. Nathan's expression was grave. The judge assigned to the case, Harold Winters, is known for traditional family values. He may be sympathetic to their narrative. "What are our options?" Maxwell asked. "We fight," Nathan replied simply. "But you need to understand what you're getting into, Maxwell. This will be public, messy. They'll question your motives, your lifestyle, your fitness as a guardian. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" Maxwell thought of Ellie's face when she asked if he'd be home for dinner. Her quiet determination despite everything she'd endured. The way she'd clutched his hand in the hospital, asking him to be the one adult who wouldn't fail her. "Whatever it takes, Nathan," he said firmly. "We're not letting them have her." When Maxwell returned home that evening, he found Ellie waiting anxiously in the foyer. She rushed forward, then stopped herself, uncertain of the boundaries between them. "How was your meeting?" she asked politely. "Productive," Maxwell replied, setting down his briefcase. "How was your doctor's appointment?" Ellie's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. "Dr. Chen says everything looks normal so far. I heard the heartbeat." Something flickered across her young face, fear mingled with wonder. In that moment, Maxwell was painfully reminded that this child was carrying another child, both of them caught in circumstances beyond their control. "Ms. Winters told me about the court hearing," Ellie said quietly. "I have to see my parents." Maxwell knelt to her eye level, a gesture that felt foreign after years of maintaining careful distance from everyone. "Ellie, I promise you won't face them alone. Nathan and I will be right there with you." Tears welled in her eyes. "They'll lie. They'll make everyone think I'm bad. Then we'll tell the truth," Maxwell said with a conviction that surprised him. "All of it." Ellie shook her head frantically. "I can't talk about what happened, not in front of strangers, not in front of them." The fear in her eyes was palpable, and Maxwell understood then that the hearing would be more than a legal formality. It would be Ellie's darkest nightmare realized. "Whatever happens in that courtroom," Maxwell promised, "you're not going back. To them, not ever." As Jenkins announced that dinner was served, Maxwell realized he'd made a vow he wasn't certain he could keep. But looking at Ellie's fragile trust in him, he knew he would move heaven and earth to try. The courthouse loomed, like a fortress of stone in judgment as Maxwell guided Ellie up the steps, his hand protective at her shoulder. Nathan flanked her other side while Victoria managed the perimeter, keeping eager reporters at bay. "Remember," Nathan murmured to Ellie, "you only need to tell the truth. Judge Winters will hear everyone in his chambers, not in open court." Ellie nodded, her face pale but determined. She wore a simple navy dress Victoria had selected, modest, age-appropriate, but of obvious quality. Every detail had been considered to present her as exactly what she was, a child deserving protection. Inside, they were directed to a waiting area outside the judge's chambers. Maxwell felt Ellie stiffen beside him. Across the room sat Joseph, and Martha Brooks flanked by their attorney and, Maxwell recognized from Nathan's briefing, Sean Brooks, the cousin Ellie had accused. Joseph Brooks' cold gaze locked with Maxwell's. The man's expression conveyed nothing but contempt, as if Maxwell were the predator in this scenario, rather than the protector. "Ellie." Martha Brooks's voice cut through the tension. "Come here this instant." Ellie's fingers dug into Maxwell's arm as she pressed closer to him. "No," she whispered. Maxwell stepped slightly in front of her. "Mrs. Brooks, your daughter is staying with me." "She is not his daughter," Martha snapped, her perfectly coiffed exterior cracking to reveal the fury beneath. "She is our child, and we have come to take her home where she belongs. Home? Maxwell couldn't keep the disgust from his voice. You threw her out into a storm, pregnant and alone. We did no such thing, Joseph interjected smoothly, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of a man used to speaking from pulpits. Ellie ran away after we attempted to discuss her inappropriate behavior. We've been searching for her ever since. Sean Brooks, a young man with an angelic face that belied Nathan's disturbing findings, smiled at Ellie. We've been so worried about you, little Elle. The nickname made Ellie tremble against Maxwell. Don't call me that, she whispered. Before tensions could escalate further, the bailiff appeared. Judge Winters will see Ellie Brooks first alone. Maxwell felt Ellie's panic. It's going to be all right, he assured her. Just tell the truth. As Ellie disappeared into the judge's chambers, Maxwell became acutely aware of the enemies surrounding him. The Brooks family huddled with their attorney, occasionally glancing his way with thinly veiled hostility. They're going to paint her as troubled and promiscuous, Nathan warned in a low voice, and they'll paint you as a wealthy eccentric with questionable motives for taking in a young girl. Let them try, Maxwell replied, his jaw set. Their actions speak for themselves. Perhaps, Nathan conceded, but they have the church behind them. Several prominent members are here to testify to their character. We need more than righteous indignation, Maxwell. We need witnesses for Ellie. Maxwell had been so focused on protecting Ellie that he'd overlooked this crucial aspect. Who could speak for her? The school she hadn't attended in months? The neighbors who'd never witnessed the abuse? The medical professionals who'd seen her for less than a week? Victoria approached, her expression carefully neutral. That woman by the water fountain. She's been watching us since we arrived. Maxwell followed her gaze to a slender woman in her early 20s, dressed simply but professionally. She met his eyes without wavering, then approached. Mr. Porter, I'm Olivia Lawson, Michael Brooks' girlfriend. Her voice was soft but steady. Michael sent me to help Ellie. Nathan immediately stepped forward. Why isn't Michael here himself? His parents threatened to cut off his college funding if he defied them, Olivia explained. But he can't stand by while they hurt Ellie again. He gave me this. She produced a thumb drive. It's recordings. Michael started documenting things after the police dismissed his reports about Sean. There's audio of Joseph and Martha discussing what to do about Ellie's situation, including their decision to send her to a residential facility that handles sinful girls. Maxwell took the thumb drive, hope rising. Will you testify to this? Olivia nodded. Michael made me promise. He said, tell the judge that my sister never lies. Not about anything important. The bailiff reappeared. Judge Winters will see Mr. and Mrs. Brooks now. As they filed past, Joseph Brooks paused beside Maxwell. You have no idea what forces you're challenging, Mr. Porter. Our community protects its own. So do I, Maxwell responded coldly. When Ellie emerged from the chambers, her eyes were red but dry. She immediately sought Maxwell, relief washing over her face when she found him. What happened? He asked gently. He asked a lot of questions, Ellie replied. About home, about what happened with Sean, about the baby. Her voice dropped to a whisper. About why I want to stay with you. And what did you tell him? A small, determined smile touched her lips. That you were the only person who stopped to help me, the only one who believed me. While the Brooks couple was with the judge, Nathan reviewed the contents of the thumb drive on his laptop, his expression growing grimmer with each file. This is damning, he confirmed. Clear evidence of their intent to discard Ellie rather than address the abuse. And there's more, documentation of previous incidents with Sean, church elders pressuring the family to handle it biblically rather than legally. Olivia nodded. Michael has been keeping records for almost a year. He tried to protect Ellie, but their parents always sided with Sean. The church, their whole world revolves around appearances. Mr. Porter, the bailiff had returned. Judge Winters will see you now. Inside the chambers, Judge Harold Winters, a man whose stern reputation preceded him, studied Maxwell over reading glasses. Mr. Porter, an interesting situation you found yourself in. Yes, Your Honor. The Brooks family paints a very different picture than young Ellie. They describe a troubled child prone to fabrication and attention-seeking behavior. Judge Winters removed his glasses. They also question your motives in taking in a young girl with no previous connection to you. Maxwell met the judge's gaze squarely. With respect, Your Honor, I found a child abandoned in a storm. She was pregnant, frightened, and had nowhere to go. What would you have done? Called the proper authorities, most likely. Judge Winters replied frankly. I did, Maxwell countered, but I also provided immediate safety and security. Since then, I've arranged for her medical care, education, and psychological support. I've opened my home to her without conditions or judgment. Noble, the judge acknowledged, but temporary guardianship is one thing, Mr. Porter. The Brooks family, despite their harsh approach to discipline, are Ellie's natural parents. The law generally favors biological families remaining intact. Maxwell leaned forward. Your Honor, we have evidence that the Brooks family not only expelled Ellie from their home, but actively concealed abuse perpetrated by her cousin. They chose their reputation over their daughter's safety. He placed the thumb drive on the judge's desk. This contains recordings and documentation collected by Michael Brooks, Ellie's brother, over the past year. It confirms Ellie's account and reveals a pattern of negligence and cover-up. Judge Winters' eyebrows rose slightly as he took the device. I'll review this evidence. In the meantime, Mr. Porter, answer one question honestly. What is your interest in this child? You're a wealthy bachelor with no children, no apparent desire for family. Why insert yourself into this situation? The question echoed those from Victoria, from Ms. Palmer, from his own sleepless nights. Maxwell considered his response carefully. 5 years ago, I lost my wife and unborn son, he began, the words still painful after all this time. Since then, I've lived essentially in isolation, focused solely on business. I didn't stop to help Ellie because I wanted to replace what I lost. I stopped because, for the first time in 5 years, I saw someone who needed help more than I needed. My carefully constructed walls. Maxwell met the judge's eyes. I'm not trying to be Ellie's father, Your Honor. I'm trying to be the adult who doesn't fail her. Again. Judge Winters studied him for a long moment. Thank you for your candor, Mr. Porter. That will be all for now. When Maxwell emerged, Ellie immediately appeared at his side. What happened? What did he say? He's reviewing all the evidence, Maxwell assured her, including what Michael sent. Tears filled Ellie's eyes. Michael helped? He didn't forget me? Olivia approached hesitantly. He never could, Ellie. He made me promise to tell you he's trying to find a way to see you. The reunion was interrupted by Martha Brooks's angry voice. Who is this woman? What lies has Michael been spreading now? The confrontation drew the attention of everyone in the waiting area. Sean Brooks stepped forward, his handsome face a mask of concern. Ellie, your parents are worried sick. This has gone on long enough. Stay away from her, Maxwell warned, his voice low and dangerous. Sean's expression hardened. Mr. Porter, you've been misled. Ellie has a history of making up stories for attention. Whatever she's told you about me, about any of us, it isn't true. Is that why there are police reports? Nathan interjected coolly. Is that why Michael documented your behavior for months? Multiple witnesses, multiple incidents, that's quite an elaborate fiction. Sean's mask slipped momentarily, revealing something ugly beneath the surface. Joseph Brooks quickly stepped in. We've heard enough slander, he declared. Judge Winters will see through this charade. Ellie is coming home today. As if summoned by the declaration, the bailiff reappeared. Judge Winters has reached a decision. All parties, please enter. Inside the chambers, the tension was palpable. Ellie stood between Maxwell and Nathan, visibly trembling. Across from them, the Brooks family projected righteous confidence. Judge Winters surveyed the assembled parties, his expression grave. I've reviewed the testimony and evidence presented. Today, this is a deeply troubling case from all perspectives. He turned to the Brooks family. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, the evidence provided by your son Michael raises serious concerns about your daughter's safety in your home. The recordings clearly contradict your testimony about Ellie running away. They indicate you explicitly told her she was no longer welcome in your home due to her sinful condition. Martha Brooks gasped. Michael recorded us? In our own home? Furthermore, the judge continued, there is compelling evidence that you were aware of inappropriate conduct by Mr. Sean Brooks toward your daughter and chose to handle it internally rather than involve proper authorities. He addressed Sean directly. Mr. Brooks, while this hearing is not about criminal charges, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for further investigation. Sean's face drained of color. The judge turned to Maxwell. Mr. Porter, while your intervention was unorthodox, it appears to have been necessary and in Ellie's best interest. I am extending the temporary guardianship for 90 days, during which time a full home study and psychological evaluation will be conducted. Relief washed over Maxwell, but Judge Winters wasn't finished. However, he continued, I am concerned about the abrupt severance of all family ties. Therefore, I am ordering supervised visitation between Ellie and her brother Michael should she wish it. He addressed Ellie directly, his tone gentler. Young lady, you have shown remarkable courage today. The court's primary concern is your welfare and that of your unborn child. Do you understand that this arrangement with Mr. Porter is still temporary, while we determine the best permanent solution? Ellie nodded, her voice small but clear. Yes, sir, but I want to stay with Mr. Porter. He makes me feel safe. Judge Winters nodded. Your wishes will be taken into consideration. For now, you will remain in Mr. Porter's care. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed as news of the explosive hearing leaked. Victoria coordinated with security to escort them safely to the waiting car. As they navigated the gauntlet of cameras and questions, Maxwell felt Ellie press close to his side, overwhelmed by the attention. Once inside the car, she finally broke down, sobs racking her small frame. They all know now. Everyone knows what happened to me. Maxwell, awkward with physical comfort after years of isolation, hesitantly put his arm around her shoulders. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Ellie. Nothing that happened was your fault. But everyone will talk, she whispered. Everyone will look at me and just see this. Her hand rested on her slightly rounded stomach. Let them look, Maxwell replied, surprising himself with his fierceness. Let them see a brave young woman who survived what would break most adults. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, Maxwell caught sight of Joseph Brooks watching from the steps, his expression a promise of battles yet to come. You think it's over, don't you? Victoria said quietly, following his gaze. It's not. People like that don't surrender easily. Neither do I, Maxwell responded, looking down at Ellie, who had finally fallen into exhausted sleep against his shoulder. For the first time since losing Catherine, Maxwell Porter had something to fight for beyond his next acquisition. Something that mattered more than profit margins and board approvals. He had made a promise to protect this child, and he intended to keep it, no matter what forces aligned against them. 3 months after the court hearing, Maxwell stood in the doorway of Ellie's transformed room, watching as she carefully arranged framed photographs on her desk. The space had evolved from a sterile guest room into a reflection of its occupant. Walls painted a soft teal, bookshelves filled with novels and textbooks, and a small bassinet waiting in the corner. Getting settled? He asked. Ellie smiled, a more frequent occurrence these days. Mr. Walker brought my test results. I passed everything with A's. That doesn't surprise me, Maxwell replied, allowing a hint of pride to color his voice. The past months had settled into an unexpected rhythm. Maxwell had restructured his work schedule to be home for dinner most evenings. Victoria had become something of a mentor to Ellie, teaching her everything from table etiquette to how to manage her increasingly changing body. Dr. Chen reported that despite the high-risk nature of such a young pregnancy, both Ellie and the baby were doing remarkably well. The nursery supplies are being delivered tomorrow, Maxwell said. Victoria has arranged everything according to Dr. Chen's recommendations. Ellie's hand rested on her now prominent belly. It feels real now, like it might actually turn out. Okay. The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Jenkins appeared moments later. Sir, Miss Caldwell is here to see you. Maxwell froze. Elizabeth? Here. He hadn't seen Catherine's mother since the funeral. Their grief had torn them apart rather than united them, Elizabeth blaming him for the high-risk pregnancy that had killed her daughter. She's quite insistent, sir. Maxwell found Elizabeth Caldwell in the foyer, elegant as ever in her late 60s. Her silver hair perfectly styled. Her expression, however, was thunderous. Maxwell, she said coldly, I see the rumors are true. Elizabeth, this is unexpected. I had to see for myself. Her gaze was accusatory. Replacing Catherine and James with a child bride and her baby? Have you completely lost your mind? The cruelty of the accusation stole Maxwell's breath. That's not what this is, isn't it? Elizabeth's voice rose. My friends are whispering that you've taken in a pregnant child, that you're playing house in the home you built with my daughter. Mr. Porter? Ellie's voice came from the staircase. Is everything okay? Elizabeth turned, seeing Ellie for the first time, young, obviously pregnant, and unnervingly vulnerable. Something flickered across the older woman's face. So you're the girl who's ensnared Maxwell. Elizabeth, enough, Maxwell warned. Ellie descended the stairs slowly. You're Catherine's mother, she said softly. You look like her, the same eyes. Elizabeth stiffened. You know nothing about my daughter. I know she was kind, Ellie replied, and that Mr. Porter loved her very much. Her picture is the only personal photo in his study. An uncomfortable silence fell. Maxwell realized he'd never explicitly told Ellie about Catherine, yet she'd observed and understood more than he'd given her credit for. Why don't we talk in the living room? Maxwell suggested, trying to diffuse the tension. The afternoon stretched painfully as Elizabeth scrutinized their living arrangement, her questions pointed and often cruel. When Ellie excused herself, visibly exhausted, Elizabeth's mask finally dropped. She's just a child, Maxwell. What were you thinking? That she needed help, Maxwell replied simply. Something I was in a position to give. And when the novelty wears off, when her baby cries all night, when she becomes a teenager with all the drama that entails? Elizabeth's voice cracked slightly. What happens to her then? The questions hit uncomfortably close to Maxwell's own, unvoiced doubts. That evening, after Elizabeth departed with cold civility, Maxwell found Ellie in the garden, staring at the sunset. I'm sorry about Elizabeth, he said, joining her on the bench. She's hurting, Ellie replied with surprising insight. She lost her daughter and grandson. Now she sees you caring for someone else's child. Maxwell was continually surprised by Ellie's emotional intelligence. The judge called today, he said, changing the subject. The home study is complete. Your temporary guardianship has been extended for another 6 months. Ellie's face lit up. Really? So I can stay? The baby can be born here? Yes, Maxwell confirmed, warmed by her joy. We've cleared the biggest hurdles. As they walked back inside, Maxwell felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The legal battles, the board's objections, Elizabeth's accusations, all had been navigated successfully. Perhaps they had found their equilibrium after all. Later that night, as Maxwell reviewed acquisition documents in his study, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Maxwell Porter, he answered. Mr. Porter. The voice was unfamiliar. This is Detective James Harlow. We need to discuss Sean Brooks. There's been a development you should be aware of. As Maxwell listened, his blood ran cold. Their victory, it seemed, had been premature. Missing? Maxwell's grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean Sean Brooks is missing? Detective Harlow's voice remained steady. He failed to appear for questioning regarding Ellie's case. His parents claim they haven't seen him in 3 days. His car was found abandoned near the bus station. After ending the call, Maxwell paced his study. Sean's disappearance could mean anything. Flight from justice, a planned retaliation, or something worse. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Victoria arrived early the next morning, immediately sensing his unease. "What's happened?" Maxwell explained the situation in hushed tones, careful that Ellie wouldn't overhear. "Nathan is working with the detective, but we need to increase security here." "Already done," Victoria replied. "I contacted the security firm last night after your message. They've added personnel and upgraded the system." Maxwell's shoulders relaxed slightly. "What would I do without you?" A rare smile touched Victoria's lips. "Flounder spectacularly, I imagine." Her expression sobered. "There's something else we need to discuss. The media has caught wind of the situation." She handed him a tablet displaying headlines: "Billionaire's Ward, Charity or Scandal," and "Porter's Pregnant Preteen. The Disturbing Truth." Maxwell's jaw tightened. "They're making it sound sordid." "People often assume the worst," Victoria said carefully, "especially when it involves a wealthy single man and a vulnerable young girl." "We need to get ahead of this," Maxwell decided. "Arrange an interview with someone reputable, someone who won't twist this into something it's not." Victoria nodded. "I'll handle it. In the meantime, you should tell Ellie. Better she hears about Sean from you than sees it on the news." Finding Ellie with her tutor in the sunroom, Maxwell waited until the lesson concluded before asking for a private word. "Is something wrong?" Ellie asked, immediately alert to his tension. "Sean has disappeared," Maxwell said gently, watching her face pale. "The police are looking for him, but I want you to be aware and extra careful." "He's coming for me, isn't he?" Ellie whispered, instinctively wrapping her arms around her growing belly. "We don't know that," Maxwell assured her, though the possibility had kept him awake all night. "But I've increased security, and you won't be alone." Tears filled Ellie's eyes. "I thought it was over, that I was safe." "You are safe," Maxwell promised, tentatively reaching out to squeeze her shoulder. "I won't let anything happen to you." That afternoon, as Maxwell worked from home, Jenkins announced a visitor, Michael Brooks, Ellie's brother. The young man, who entered Maxwell's study, looked exhausted, his resemblance to Ellie evident in his serious eyes. "Mr. Porter, thank you for seeing me." "Your sister has missed you," Maxwell replied, assessing the teenager who had risked so much to protect Ellie. Michael nodded, emotion briefly overwhelming him. "Is she okay? With everything that's happening with Sean?" "She's worried," Maxwell admitted. "We all are. Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" "No," Michael said grimly. "But I know Sean. He's vindictive and he hates losing control. When the investigation started, he became obsessed with Ellie, said she'd ruined everything and would pay for it." A chill ran down Maxwell's spine. "Have you told the police this?" "Yes, but there's something else." Michael lowered his voice. "I don't think Sean is the father of Ellie's baby." Maxwell stared at him. "What?" "The timeline doesn't match what I documented," Michael explained. "And Ellie would never talk about it, even with me, I think." He struggled with the words. "I think someone else was involved." "Her music teacher," Maxwell said quietly, remembering fragments Ellie had let slip. "During therapy sessions. David Lambert." Michael's face registered shock, then dawning horror. "Lambert, he taught half the kids at church. Our parents trusted him completely." The implications were staggering. Not one predator, but two, both protected by a community that valued reputation over justice. Their conversation was interrupted by Ellie's voice. "Michael." She stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "You're really here?" As the siblings embraced, Maxwell stepped out to give them privacy, his mind reeling from this new information. If Lambert was involved, it added another layer of complexity and danger to an already volatile situation. That evening, after Michael departed with promises to return soon, Maxwell found Ellie in the nursery, organizing tiny clothes with methodical precision. "You didn't tell me about David Lambert," he said gently. Ellie's hands stilled. "Who told you about him?" It doesn't matter. Why didn't you tell me? Her shoulders slumped. Because Sean was bad enough. Because I was ashamed. Because no one believed me about him. So why would they believe me about Mr. Lambert too? The raw honesty broke Maxwell's heart. I believe you, Ellie, always. She turned to him, tears in her eyes but something like hope in her face. Do you promise? I promise, Maxwell said firmly, even as he wondered what other secrets might still be buried beneath her brave exterior. Mr. Porter, we've found David. Lambert. Detective Harlow's voice crackled through the phone. He's teaching at a private school in Connecticut. New name, same occupation. Maxwell's grip tightened on the receiver. And Sean Brooks? Still missing. We've expanded the search nationwide. After ending the call, Maxwell stared out his office window at the Boston skyline. 2 weeks had passed since Michael's revelation. 2 weeks of increased security and sleepless nights. The door opened, admitting Victoria with her usual precision timing. The board meeting starts in 20 minutes. Cancel it, Maxwell decided. We're going to Connecticut, Victoria's eyebrows rose. The Johnson acquisition closure is today. Nathan can handle it. This is more important. 3 hours later, Maxwell and Detective Harlow sat in the headmaster's office of Westfield Academy, waiting for David Lambert, now calling himself Daniel Lawrence, to arrive. Remember, Harlow cautioned, we're just questioning him. We don't have enough evidence for an arrest yet. Maxwell nodded, though every fiber of his being wanted justice or vengeance for what this man had done to Ellie. The door opened, and Maxwell's first impression of David Lambert was his utter ordinariness. Average height, pleasant features, the kind of forgettable face that would never draw suspicion. Lambert froze upon seeing the detective's badge. What's this about? David Lambert, Harlow began. We'd like to ask you some questions regarding your former student, Ellie Brooks. All color drained from Lambert's face. I don't know anyone by that name. That's strange, Maxwell interjected coldly, considering you taught her piano for 3 years. Recognition dawned in Lambert's eyes. You're Maxwell Porter. I've seen you in the papers, the man who took in that troubled girl. Troubled because of what you did to her, Maxwell replied, struggling to maintain his composure. The next hour was a masterclass in denial, as Lambert deflected every question, portraying Ellie as an unstable child with a crush on her teacher. These accusations are absurd, Lambert insisted. I was a respected member of that community. Ask anyone. We have, Harlow replied evenly, including several other former students who've come forward with similar stories. Lambert's facade cracked momentarily before he regained control. I want a lawyer. As they left the school, Maxwell's frustration boiled over. He's guilty. You saw it in his face. I did, Harlow agreed. But seeing and proving are different matters. We need more evidence. Back at the mansion, Maxwell found Ellie waiting anxiously in the library. Did you find him? She asked, her voice small. Maxwell nodded, taking a seat beside her. We did. The police are building a case against him, Ellie, but they need your help. Fear flashed across her face. What kind of help? Your testimony, details that only you would know. Maxwell hesitated. And a paternity test after the baby is born. Ellie's hands protectively covered her stomach. No, I can't. I can't talk about what he did. And I don't want my baby connected to him in any way. Ellie, you promised I was safe here, she interrupted, tears spilling down her cheeks. That I could put it all behind me. You are safe, Maxwell assured her. But Lambert is teaching at another school, with access to other children. Without evidence, he'll keep hurting others. The weight of this revelation hung heavy between them. That night, unable to sleep, Maxwell found himself outside the nursery. The room was nearly complete. Walls painted a soft yellow. A rocking chair by the window, a mobile of stars hanging above the crib. Catherine would have loved this, came a quiet voice behind him. Maxwell turned to find Elizabeth Caldwell, who had been visiting more frequently since their tense first meeting. I didn't hear you come in, Maxwell said. Victoria let me in. I couldn't sleep either. Elizabeth joined him at the nursery door. She told me about Lambert. Maxwell nodded, emotions too complex for words. Catherine was assaulted in college. Elizabeth said quietly. Did she ever tell you? Shocked, Maxwell shook his head. She was too ashamed to report it, afraid no one would believe her. Elizabeth's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I've been unfair to Ellie, and to you. Before Maxwell could respond, a scream tore through the house. Ellie's voice filled with terror. They rushed to her room to find her sitting upright in bed, clutching her stomach. Something's wrong, she gasped. The baby, I think something's wrong with the baby. As Victoria called for an ambulance, Maxwell held Ellie's trembling hand, his world narrowing to this moment, this crisis. Whatever came next, there would be no going back to the ordered solitude of his former life. The truth he'd been avoiding crashed over him as Ellie clutched his hand in the ambulance. He loved this child as if she were his own daughter, and he would do anything to protect her and her baby, regardless of the cost to himself or his carefully constructed world. The hospital waiting room had become distressingly familiar territory over the past 6 months. Maxwell paced the sterile corridor while Elizabeth sat quietly, her hands clasped in prayer, a gesture that reminded him painfully of Catherine. Victoria arrived, breathless and carrying Maxwell's briefcase. I brought the documents you'll need to sign as her guardian. Any word from the doctors? Elizabeth asked. Not yet, Maxwell replied, the weight of uncertainty crushing him. Dr. Chen finally emerged, her expression cautiously optimistic. Mr. Porter, Ellie is stable. She experienced premature contractions, likely brought on by stress, but we've managed to stop them. Both she and the baby are okay for now. Relief washed over Maxwell. Can I see her? Briefly. She needs rest. Ellie looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her. Her eyes fluttered open as Maxwell approached. The baby, she whispered. Is fine, he assured her, taking her hand. But Dr. Chen says you need complete bed rest for a while. Tears filled Ellie's eyes. I'm sorry for scaring everyone. You have nothing to apologize for, Maxwell said firmly. Ellie's grip tightened on his hand. I heard you talking to Detective Harlow yesterday, about David Lambert. Maxwell froze. Ellie, I want to testify, she said, her voice stronger. You were right. If I don't say something, he'll hurt other girls. The courage of this child continually humbled Maxwell. We'll talk about it when you're stronger. After Ellie drifted back to sleep, Maxwell found Elizabeth and Victoria in deep conversation, their usual tension temporarily suspended by shared concern. She wants to testify against Lambert, Maxwell told them. That poor child has been through enough, Elizabeth said, her earlier hostility toward Ellie completely transformed. It's her decision, Victoria replied, and a brave one. As they drove home, Maxwell received an unexpected call from Nathan. Maxwell, we have a situation. The Brooks family is filing a new petition for custody, claiming Ellie's medical emergency proves you're not providing adequate care. That's absurd, Maxwell snapped. It gets worse, Nathan continued. They've enlisted David Lambert as a character witness. He's claiming Ellie fabricated allegations against him due to psychological instability. White-hot rage filled Maxwell. They're working together now? It appears so. The hearing is set for next week. We need to prepare. The following days became a blur of legal preparation, medical consultations, and managing Ellie's care. Dr. Chen arranged for a specialized nurse to monitor Ellie at home, where she remained confined to bed. Michael visited daily, bringing homework, and news from the outside world that didn't revolve around court battles and medical concerns. On the eve of the hearing, Maxwell found Elizabeth sitting with Ellie, reading aloud from a worn copy of Anne of Green Gables. My mother read this to me when I was sick, Elizabeth explained when Ellie had fallen asleep. Catherine loved it too. Maxwell nodded, throat tight with emotion. I was wrong about you, Maxwell, Elizabeth said quietly. And about Ellie. I was so blinded by grief that I couldn't see you were trying to heal too. I'm not sure what I'm doing most of the time, Maxwell admitted. Every decision feels like I'm navigating in the dark. That's parenthood, Elizabeth replied with a sad smile. Catherine would be proud of the father you've become. The word father no longer felt foreign or frightening. Somewhere along this impossible journey, Maxwell had crossed a threshold he hadn't even recognized. The next morning, Maxwell entered the courtroom with Nathan at his side, prepared for battle. What he hadn't prepared for was the sight of Sean Brooks sitting beside the Brooks family, his reappearance as perfectly timed as it was suspicious. Your Honor, Joseph Brooks's attorney began, we contend that Mr. Porter's home is not a suitable environment for a minor in Ellie's condition. Her recent hospitalization demonstrates the stress this arrangement is causing. Sean Brooks took the stand, portraying himself as a concerned cousin who'd been falsely accused. Ellie has always been troubled, he testified smoothly. She craves attention, makes up stories. Mr. Porter is just her latest victim. When David Lambert testified similarly, Maxwell nearly lost his composure. Only Nathan's steadying hand kept him in his seat. Your Honor, Nathan countered when their turn came. We have evidence that both Sean Brooks and David Lambert have historically preyed upon vulnerable children. Their coordinated testimony should be viewed with extreme suspicion. As witnesses for Ellie's side testified, Dr. Chen, Mr. Walker, even Elizabeth. Maxwell watched the judge's expression remain frustratingly neutral. When it was Maxwell's turn to speak, he abandoned his prepared statement. Your Honor, 6 months ago I found a child who had been discarded by the very people who should have protected her. Today, those same people are attempting to reclaim her, not out of love, but to silence her. I'm not perfect, but I love Ellie, enough to stand between her and those who would harm her, regardless of the cost to myself. The courtroom fell silent. Maxwell's public admission of love for his ward hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. The court finds in favor of the petitioners. Judge Winter's words fell like hammer blows. Ellie Brooks will be returned to her parents' custody, effective immediately. Maxwell sat frozen, unable to process the devastating ruling. Nathan was already on his feet, arguing for a stay pending appeal, but the judge's expression remained implacable. Given the medical concerns, Miss Brooks will be transferred to Boston Children's Hospital until deemed stable for release to her family. Outside the courtroom, Sean Brooks smirked triumphantly, while Joseph and Martha maintained a veneer of solemn dignity for the gathered press. We're grateful to have our daughter returned to us, Joseph stated for the cameras. We thank the court for recognizing where she truly belongs. Victoria guided Maxwell through the crush of reporters to the waiting car. Nathan is filing an emergency appeal, she assured him. This isn't over. How do I tell her? Maxwell asked, his voice hollow. How do I tell Ellie I failed to protect her? Back at the mansion, Maxwell found Ellie waiting anxiously in her bedroom, the nurse hovering nearby, monitoring her vitals. What happened? She asked immediately, reading the defeat in his expression. Maxwell sat beside her bed, taking her hand. The judge ruled in your parents' favor. Temporarily, he added quickly. Nathan is filing an appeal. All color drained from Ellie's face. No, they can't make me go back. You'll be transferred to Children's Hospital until your condition stabilizes, Maxwell explained, hating each word. I'll visit every day. We'll fight this, Ellie. They won't let you see me. She whispered, panic rising in her voice. They'll make sure I never see you again. The nurse stepped forward as Ellie's monitors began to beep in warning. She needs to remain calm. Her blood pressure is spiking. Maxwell tried to reassure her, but Ellie's distress escalated until Dr. Chen, summoned by the nurse, administered a mild sedative. This ruling endangers both Ellie and her baby, Dr. Chen informed Maxwell bluntly. The stress alone could trigger premature labor. I'm doing everything I can to overturn it, Maxwell replied, desperation edging his voice. Over the next 48 hours, Maxwell barely left his study, coordinating with Nathan on legal strategies while Victoria managed the growing media frenzy. The story had exploded nationally. Billionaire battles religious family for pregnant child. Elizabeth arrived with dinner Maxwell wouldn't eat. "You need your strength," she insisted. "For Ellie's sake." "I promised her she wouldn't go back to them," Maxwell said, staring at documents that blurred before his exhausted eyes. "I promised to protect her." "And you will," Elizabeth replied firmly, "but not by collapsing from exhaustion." On the morning Ellie was scheduled for transfer, Maxwell entered her room to find her attempting to get out of bed. "What are you doing?" he asked, alarmed. "Running away," she said frantically. "I won't go back to them, I can't." Maxwell gently guided her back to bed. "Ellie, you're 7 months pregnant with a high-risk condition. You can't run." "Then help me," she begged, clutching his hands. "You have money, connections. We could go somewhere they couldn't find us." The desperation in her eyes tempted Maxwell. Momentarily, he did have resources. Private jets, international properties, funds that couldn't be traced. "That would be kidnapping," he said gently. "It would only make things worse." Tears streamed down Ellie's face. "Worse than being sent. Back to the people who threw me away? Who let Sean and David hurt me? Who will make me give up my baby?" Maxwell had no answer that wouldn't further break her heart. The ambulance arrived precisely at noon. Maxwell accompanied Ellie to the hospital, maintaining a brave facade while inwardly crumbling. In her hospital room, Martha Brooks waited with a social worker, her expression triumphant behind a mask of maternal concern. "We'll take good care of her now," Martha said, the threat beneath her words clear. As Maxwell prepared to leave, Ellie grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "Find Michael," she whispered urgently. "He has something important, something that will help." Before Maxwell could ask what she meant, a nurse ushered him out. In the corridor, Martha Brooks followed him. "This charade is over, Mr. Porter. You will not contact Ellie again." "Or what?" Maxwell challenged, his patience finally snapping. Martha's smile was cold. "Or we'll pursue charges against you for inappropriate conduct with a minor. Sean and David have both provided statements about things Ellie supposedly told them about your relationship." The implication was so vile Maxwell could barely process it. "You would use your own daughter this way? Manipulate her trauma for your agenda?" "Our agenda is protecting our family's reputation," Martha hissed. "Something you've damaged beyond measure. Stay away from Ellie or you'll regret it." As Maxwell left the hospital, a crushing sense of defeat overwhelmed him. In his car, he found himself dialing Michael's number with trembling hands. "Michael, it's Maxwell Porter. Ellie said you have something important. Something that will help." The young man's voice was grim. "I do, but it might destroy what's left of my family." "Your sister needs you," Maxwell replied. "Now more than ever." "Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour," Michael said after a pause. "And Mr. Porter, come alone." Riverside Park was nearly deserted as evening approached, the late autumn chill keeping casual visitors away. Maxwell spotted Michael on a bench overlooking the water, hunched against the cold. "Thank you for coming," Maxwell said, taking a seat beside him. Michael looked even more exhausted than when they'd last met. "They won't let me see her. My own parents have barred me from the hospital." "What did Ellie mean? What do you have?" Michael pulled a small voice recorder from his pocket. "After the first hearing, I started recording everything, every conversation in our house. I knew they weren't done trying to get Ellie back." He pressed play. Joseph Brooks's voice emerged, unnervingly calm. "Once we have Ellie home, we'll send her to New Light Restoration Center. They handle troubled girls, pregnant or not. They'll make sure the baby is placed with a proper Christian family." Martha's voice followed. "And if Porter becomes a problem?" "Then we use Sean and David's statements. No one will believe him over 2 respected community members. His reputation will be destroyed." Michael stopped the recording. "There's more. Plans to isolate Ellie, to pressure her into recanting her accusations. Conversations with church elders about managing the situation." Maxwell felt sick. This proves they're planning to take her baby, to silence her. They've convinced themselves they're saving her soul, Michael said bitterly. And their reputation. We need to get this to Nathan immediately. Michael hesitated. There's something else you should hear first. He forwarded the recording, then pressed play again. Sean's voice, slurred with alcohol. I don't care what you. Tell the court. I never touched her. That was all, David. I just helped keep her quiet afterwards. The admission of conspiracy struck Maxwell like a physical blow. This exonerates you, Michael. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because they're still my parents, Michael replied, his voice breaking. As horrible as they've been, I kept hoping they'd change, that they'd choose Ellie over their precious reputation. Maxwell understood the painful loyalty. Hadn't he spent years serving a corporation that viewed him as merely a mechanism for profit? You're doing the right thing, Maxwell assured him. This will help save Ellie. As they parted, Michael pressed the recorder into Maxwell's hand. Tell. Ellie, I'm sorry it took me so long to be brave enough. Back at the mansion, Maxwell found Victoria and Nathan waiting in his study. Their expressions confirmed his worst fears. What's happened? He demanded. The court denied our emergency appeal, Nathan said grimly, and the Brooks family has filed a restraining order preventing you from contacting Ellie. They've accelerated their timeline, Victoria added. They're planning to transfer Ellie to a residential facility in Vermont as soon as she's medically cleared. Maxwell played Michael's recording. Nathan's expression shifted from defeat to cautious hope. This changes things. The admission from John alone is grounds to reopen the case. How quickly can you file? Maxwell asked. First thing tomorrow, but Maxwell, even with this evidence, the courts move slowly. It could be weeks before we get a hearing. Ellie doesn't have weeks, Maxwell replied, determination hardening his voice. Her parents will have her in that restoration center before we ever get to court. That night, alone in his study, Maxwell confronted the ruthless side of himself. He'd cultivated in business but had kept separate from his relationship with Ellie. He had resources, influence, methods that operated outside conventional channels. The temptation to use everything at his disposal, legal or otherwise, to rescue Ellie was overwhelming. A soft knock interrupted his dark thoughts. Elizabeth entered, carrying tea. You look terrible, she observed, setting the cup before him. I feel worse, Maxwell admitted. Elizabeth studied him carefully. You're planning something reckless. It wasn't a question. Maxwell remained silent. Catherine had that same look when she was determined to do something impulsive, Elizabeth continued. Usually something noble but ill-advised. They're going to take Ellie's baby, Maxwell finally said. Send her to a place that will break her spirit. I promised I wouldn't let that happen. Elizabeth sat across from him. When Catherine died, I blamed you. I thought if you hadn't married her, hadn't gotten her pregnant, she'd still be alive. My familiar guilt washed over Maxwell. I was wrong, Elizabeth continued softly. Catherine chose your life together because she loved you, just as you've chosen to love Ellie as a daughter. And now I've failed them both, Maxwell whispered. Elizabeth reached across the desk, taking his hand. Catherine would tell you that. Love isn't about winning every battle. It's about staying in the fight, especially when it seems hopeless. For the first time since Catherine's death, Maxwell allowed himself to weep. For his wife, his stillborn son, for Ellie, and for the man he'd become in their absence. When he finally looked up, something had shifted inside him. The ruthless businessman and the compassionate guardian were no longer at war. They had found common purpose in the most important fight of his life. Thank you, he said to Elizabeth, who had remained silently supportive through his breakdown. For what? For reminding me who I am. Who Catherine believed I could be. Elizabeth smiled sadly. Now what are we going to do about Ellie? Mr. Porter, what you're proposing walks a dangerous line, Detective Harlow warned. They sat in Maxwell's study, Michael's recordings between them. If I officially receive this evidence, it has to go through proper channels, which could take weeks, Maxwell countered. Weeks Ellie doesn't have, The detective sighed. Off the record? I believe Ellie. But the Brooks family has powerful friends, including Judge Winters. So what do we do? Maxwell asked, frustration evident. We need someone else to corroborate Sean's admission. Harlow tapped the recorder. And we need it quickly. After the detective left, Maxwell convened a strategy session with Nathan, Victoria, Elizabeth, and Michael in the library. The residential facility, New Light Restoration Center, is expecting Ellie next Tuesday, Victoria reported. I've researched them. They specialize in redirecting wayward youth through strict religious programming and separating teenage mothers from their babies, Nathan added grimly. They partner with private adoption agencies. Michael's hands clenched into fists. I can't believe they do this to their own daughter. They don't see her as their daughter anymore, Maxwell said quietly. Just a problem to be solved. Elizabeth, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. What about other victims? Lambert taught music to dozens of children over the years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If others came forward, Nathan began. It would corroborate Ellie's account and strengthen our position, Maxwell finished. But how do we find them? Michael straightened. Through the church. Community. There were always whispers, comments about not leaving girls alone with Lambert. Someone must have known something. That's risky, Victoria cautioned. Those same people have already chosen sides. Not all of them, Michael insisted. Olivia, my girlfriend. Her younger sister took lessons from Lambert. She quit suddenly. 3 years ago. Never explained why. Can you talk to her? Maxwell asked. Michael nodded. I'll try. As the group dispersed, each with assignments, Maxwell felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time since the devastating ruling, they had a plan. Over the next 48 hours, their efforts gained unexpected momentum. Michael returned with not one but 3 young women willing to speak about Lambert. Olivia's sister had saved inappropriate text messages. Another former student had told her parents, who'd simply withdrawn her from lessons without reporting anything. Detective Harlow moved quickly with the new evidence, obtaining warrants for Lambert's digital records that revealed a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years. Lambert's been arrested, Nathan reported, entering Maxwell's study with the first good news in days. The evidence was overwhelming once people started talking. What about Sean? Maxwell asked. Still protected by the church, but the facade is cracking. 2 deacons have resigned in protest over how the situation was handled. Maxwell allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before refocusing. How does this help Ellie's custody situation? I'm filing an emergency motion based on the new evidence. The Brooks' credibility is shattered. They were demonstrably aware of Lambert's behavior and chose to protect him over their daughter. Hope flickered in Maxwell's chest. When will we know? Judge Winters has recused himself. Apparently he's a longtime friend of Pastor Brooks. Our case has been reassigned to Judge Miriam Garcia. The development was better than they could have hoped for. Judge Garcia was known for her advocacy on behalf of children's rights. That evening, as Maxwell reviewed the latest filings, Victoria entered with a rare smile. We have permission to visit Ellie. Judge Garcia granted limited visitation while she reviews the case. The next morning, Maxwell and Elizabeth entered Ellie's hospital room to find her pale but alert, her growing belly more prominent than ever against her thin frame. You came, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. They said I'd never see you. Again. Maxwell took her hand. I promised I wouldn't abandon you. I'm sorry it took so long. Michael gave you the recordings? Maxwell nodded. They've already made a difference. Lambert has been arrested. Ellie's eyes widened. Really? He's going to jail? He is, Maxwell confirmed. And we're fighting to bring you home. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile lit Ellie's face. Then, suddenly, she gasped, her hand going to her stomach. What's wrong? Maxwell asked, alarmed. Ellie guided his hand to her belly. Feel, she's kicking. The sensation of the baby moving beneath his palm left Maxwell speechless. This tiny life, against all odds, was fighting just as hard as the rest of them. She? Elizabeth asked softly. Ellie nodded. Dr. Chen told me yesterday. It's a girl. Amag. Maxwell left the hospital. His resolve had never been stronger. This wasn't just about saving Ellie anymore. It was about protecting her daughter, too, giving both of them the future they deserved. Maxwell paced the length of his study, phone pressed to his ear. Are you certain, Nathan? There's no room for error here. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m., Nathan confirmed. Judge Garcia has reviewed all the evidence, including the recordings and Lambert's arrest. Things look promising, Maxwell. 2 weeks had passed since their first visit to Ellie in the hospital. Each day had brought small victories, more of Lambert's. Victims coming forward, Sean Brooks finally being questioned by authorities, the church elders distancing themselves from the Brooks family. Mr. Porter. Jenkins appeared at the doorway. The nursery designer is here for final approval. Maxwell had thrown himself into preparations for Ellie's return, refusing to entertain any other outcome. The nursery had been completely renovated. The yellow walls now adorned with a hand-painted mural of a night sky, the crib assembled and waiting. Everything looks perfect, he told the designer. Ellie will love it. Despite his outward confidence, anxiety gnawed at him. Tomorrow's hearing would determine everything, whether Ellie would return home with him or be sent to the new light facility, which still expected her arrival the following week. Victoria entered, tablet in hand. The press is requesting statements. Ahead of tomorrow's ruling. They're camped outside the courthouse already. No comments, Maxwell replied firmly. This isn't a media circus, it's Ellie's life. There's something else, Victoria added, her expression unusually hesitant. I've received a call from Martha Brooks. She's requesting a private meeting with you. Maxwell stared at her in disbelief. What could she possibly want to discuss now? She wouldn't say, only that it's urgent and concerns Ellie's future. After careful consideration, Maxwell agreed to meet Martha at a neutral location, a private room at the Four Seasons Hotel, with Nathan present as a precaution. Martha Brooks arrived precisely on time, her appearance immaculate, but her eyes betraying tension. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Porter. What do you want, Mrs. Brooks? Maxwell asked coldly. Martha's composure cracked slightly. I want to make a deal. Concerning your daughter, the one you threw out and then tried to silence? The bitterness in Maxwell's voice was palpable. You don't understand our position, Martha insisted. The church is everything to us, our community, our livelihood. More important than your child's welfare, Maxwell interrupted. Yes, that's been abundantly clear. Martha's lips thinned. Joseph doesn't know I'm here. He wouldn't approve. For the first time, Maxwell detected genuine fear beneath her polished exterior. What are you proposing? Withdraw your custody petition, Martha said. In exchange, we'll place Ellie in your care through a private arrangement. No courts, no more publicity. Nathan leaned forward. Why the sudden change of heart, Mrs. Brooks? Martha's hands twisted in her lap. The church is fracturing over this situation. Lambert's arrest has caused complications. Joseph is becoming increasingly unstable, talking about taking Ellie away where no one can find her. The admission sent a chill through Maxwell. You're afraid of him. I'm being practical, Martha countered. This arrangement benefits everyone. You get Ellie, we save face. The matter is resolved quietly. And Ellie's baby? Maxwell pressed. Martha's expression hardened momentarily. Included in the arrangement, of course. Maxwell studied the woman before him, this mother who had failed her daughter so completely, yet still believed she had bargaining power. I'll consider your offer. After Martha left, Nathan turned to Maxwell incredulously. You're not seriously considering this? Of course not, Maxwell replied. But her visit tells us something important. They're desperate. Joseph Brooks is unraveling. We need to ensure Ellie has protection until the hearing tomorrow. Maxwell immediately called Detective Harlow, arranging for police presence at the hospital. Then he visited Ellie, finding her sitting up in bed, sketching in a notebook Michael had brought her. Is something wrong? She asked, immediately sensing his concern. Just taking extra precautions, Maxwell assured her. How are you feeling? Ready to come home, Ellie replied, her hand resting on her belly. We both are. The simple statement, home, filled Maxwell with determination. Whatever happened tomorrow, he would ensure Ellie and her daughter had the home they deserved. That night, unable to sleep, Maxwell found himself in the nursery, making one final adjustment to the mobile hanging above the crib. Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, watching him with gentle understanding. Everything is ready, she observed. Maxwell nodded. For Ellie and Catherine. Catherine? Ellie wants to name the baby after my wife, Maxwell explained, emotion thickening his voice. If it's all right with you? Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. It's more than all right, it's perfect. As dawn broke on the day of the hearing, Maxwell stood before the window in his study, watching the sun illuminate Boston. Whatever happened in that courtroom, his life had been irreversibly changed by a chance encounter in a rainstorm. He was no longer the isolated widower whose grief had become a fortress. Ellie had brought him back to life, had made him a father in all the ways that mattered. Today he would fight with everything he had to make that reality legally binding. The courthouse buzzed with tension as Maxwell entered with Nathan and Victoria flanking him protectively. Elizabeth had gone to the hospital to stay with Ellie, who was too far along in her pregnancy to attend the hearing. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions that Maxwell ignored as security cleared a path. Inside, he spotted the Brooks family huddled with their attorney. Joseph's face was haggard, his eyes burning with an intensity that confirmed Martha's warnings. All rise for the Honorable Judge Miriam Garcia. Judge Garcia, a formidable woman, her 60s, surveyed the packed courtroom with practiced neutrality. Let me be clear from the outset, she began. This court's only concern is the welfare of Ellie Brooks and her unborn child. I've reviewed the extensive documentation in this case, but I still have questions for all parties. For the next hour, she methodically questioned the Brooks attorney about their shifting narrative, from claiming Ellie had run away to acknowledging they had asked her to leave. And the New Light Restoration Center, Judge Garcia continued, their policy regarding teen mothers and their infants? The attorney shifted uncomfortably. They provide adoption services for those who choose that option. Is it truly a choice? When the mother is a minor in their custody with no legal representation, the judge pressed. Before he could answer, the courtroom doors burst open. Detective Harlow entered urgently, approaching the bench. After a brief, hushed conference, Judge Garcia's expression darkened. This court will take a 30-minute recess, she announced. Mr. Porter, Detective Harlow needs to speak with you immediately. In a private conference room, Harlow delivered the devastating news. Ellie is missing from the hospital. Security. Footage shows Joseph Brooks entering her floor 20 minutes before Elizabeth arrived. By then, Ellie was gone. Maxwell felt the room tilt. He took her while we're in court? It appears so. We have officers searching, roadblocks in place, but he mentioned a cabin, Maxwell interrupted, a memory surfacing. Michael once mentioned a family cabin in New Hampshire, isolated. Harlow immediately made calls while Maxwell fought rising panic. When they returned to the courtroom, Judge Garcia addressed the situation directly. Mr. Brooks, where is your daughter? Joseph stood, righteousness emanating from every pore. Somewhere safe from his influence. He pointed at Maxwell. This man has corrupted my daughter, turned her against her family, her faith. Mr. Brooks. Judge Garcia cut in sharply. I am holding you in contempt of court. Furthermore, I am issuing a warrant for your arrest for interference with custody and potential kidnapping. Officers, take him into custody. As police moved toward Joseph, he suddenly pulled something from his jacket, a small silver object that glinted under the courtroom lights. Stay back, he shouted, holding the gun with trembling hands. None of you understand what's at stake here. Her soul, my grandchild's soul. The courtroom erupted in panic. Nathan pulled Maxwell down behind the table as security drew weapons. Martha screamed, "Joseph, no!" Mr. Brooks, Judge Garcia, remained remarkably calm. "Put down the weapon. You're only making things worse for yourself and Ellie." "You don't know where she is," Joseph declared, backing toward the exit. "None of you do." Maxwell rose slowly, hands visible. "I do." Joseph's attention snapped to him, gun wavering. "You're lying." "The cabin on Lake Winnipesaukee," Maxwell said quietly. "Michael told me about it months ago. Police are already on their way." Joseph's composure cracked. "She's my daughter. Mine to discipline, to guide." "She's a child who needed protection," Maxwell countered steadily. "Protection you failed to provide when Sean and David hurt her, when she needed you most." Something in Joseph seemed to collapse. Whether from Maxwell's words or the sirens wailing outside, his shoulders slumped. The gun lowered slightly. "She was always difficult," he whispered, more to himself than anyone. "Always questioning, defying. The pregnancy was God's punishment." "No," Maxwell's voice was firm. "It was the result of abuse by men you protected, men you chose over your own daughter." In that moment of distraction, security officers rushed Joseph, disarming him without incident. As they led him away, his final words hung in the air. "You'll never find her in time." Within minutes, Maxwell was racing toward the hospital in Detective Harlow's car, lights flashing. Elizabeth met them at the entrance, frantic with guilt. "Was only 5 minutes late," she cried. 5 minutes! "This isn't your fault," Maxwell assured her, even as fear clawed at his throat. Ellie was 8 months pregnant, medically vulnerable, in the hands of a desperate man. Harlow's phone rang. "Ooh, the cabin is empty," he reported after a brief conversation. "No sign of them." "Where else?" Maxwell demanded, desperation mounting. "Where would he take her?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Martha Brooks approached, police escort, beside her. "Not the cabin," she said, her voice hollow with defeat. "The church. He'd take her to be cleansed where it all began." Covenant Faith Church stood dark and imposing against the twilight sky as police vehicles surrounded it, lights flashing silently. Maxwell's heart pounded as Detective Harlow outlined the approach. "We've confirmed they're inside. Officers have secured all exits. Our priority is Ellie's safety." "I'm going in with you," Maxwell insisted. "Maxwell, it's too dangerous," Victoria cautioned. "She'll be frightened. She needs to see a familiar face." His tone left no room for argument. Inside the church, guided by Martha's information, they moved silently toward the baptismal area. Joseph's voice echoed through the empty sanctuary, reciting prayers in a fevered cadence. "Please," they heard. Ellie plead, her voice weak. "My baby, something's wrong. I need a doctor." Maxwell's blood ran cold at the desperation in her voice. "The water will cleanse you both," Joseph responded. "Free you from sin, from corruption." Maxwell stepped into view, Harlow beside him. "Joseph, it's over." Joseph stood at the baptismal font. Ellie slumped against the edge, her face contorted in pain. "This doesn't concern you anymore, Porter." "Dad, please," Ellie gasped. "The baby's coming. I need help." "Ellie," Maxwell called softly. "I'm here. You're going to be okay." She turned toward his voice, relief flooding her features before another wave of pain hit. "Maxwell, the baby, she's coming now." Joseph moved between them. "Stay back. She must be cleansed before the child comes." "She needs medical attention immediately," Maxwell insisted, taking a careful step forward. "Your grandchild's life is at stake." "Grandchild?" Joseph laughed bitterly. "This abomination is no kin of mine. Once it's gone, Ellie can start fresh. Be forgiven." Horror dawned as Maxwell realized Joseph's true intention, not cleansing but ensuring the baby wouldn't survive. As officers moved in, Joseph grabbed Ellie roughly. "Stay back or I'll finish what God started." Ellie cried out in pain, clutching her stomach as fluid pooled at her feet. "The baby's coming now, please." In that moment of chaotic distraction, Maxwell lunged forward. Joseph released Ellie to defend himself, and they grappled briefly before officers swarmed in, subduing Joseph. Maxwell reached Ellie just as her legs gave way. He caught her, easing her gently to the floor. "I've got you. Help is coming. It's..." "Too late," she gasped, gripping his hand with surprising strength. "She's coming now, Maxwell. Our Catherine is coming." The next moments blurred into a symphony of urgent voices as paramedics arrived. Dr. Chen, alerted by Victoria, appeared like an angel of mercy, taking control with calm efficiency. "The baby's in distress," she announced. "We need to deliver now." With no time for transport, the church sanctuary became an impromptu delivery room. Maxwell remained at Ellie's side, supporting her through each agonizing contraction, whispering encouragement as she fought to bring her daughter safely into the world. "One more push, Ellie," Dr. Chen urged. "She's almost here." With a final Herculean effort, Ellie brought her daughter into the world. The tiny cry that followed was the most beautiful sound Maxwell had ever heard. "She's here," he whispered, tears streaming freely. "Catherine is here." As they rushed mother and child to the hospital, Maxwell held Ellie's hand, making a silent vow never to let go again. 6 months later, sunlight streamed through the windows of Maxwell's study, now transformed with children's books alongside financial reports. Catherine Elizabeth Porter Brooks, healthy despite her dramatic arrival, slept peacefully in a bassinet beside his desk. The door opened as Ellie entered, looking more like a typical teenager than the frightened child he'd found in the rain. "The adoption papers came," she announced, holding the envelope triumphantly. Maxwell smiled. Judge Garcia had granted his petition to adopt Ellie while also preserving her rights as Catherine's mother. An unconventional arrangement for an unconventional family. "Michael's here," Ellie continued. "He brought his college acceptance letters. Elizabeth is making lunch with Victoria." "I'll be right there," Maxwell promised. Alone for a moment, he glanced at the photographs now prominently displayed. Catherine, his beloved first wife, Ellie holding baby Catherine, and the newest addition, the entire unlikely family gathered at Catherine's christening. As baby Catherine stirred, Maxwell lifted his daughter's daughter, his granddaughter by law but his child in heart, marveling at how his greatest loss had ultimately led to his greatest blessing. "Come on, little one," he whispered. "Our family is waiting." The end.